Hello, everyone, and welcome to CareersTalk. I'm Duane Sharma, an Agile consultant based in Netherlands, and today we are going to discuss Senior Scrum Master questions asked at EY, shared by our WhatsApp group member. And to help us with the answers, we have invited Duane Gerard from the USA. A bit about Duane: he is a PSM3 certified Agile transformation lead and Agile coach who has led several Agile transformations from start to finish. But friends, before we start, make sure to subscribe for more such informative sessions. And if you find the content valuable, don't forget to hit that like button. So without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, Duane, and thank you for giving your time today. Duane, over to you.
Thanks, Anand. It's nice to be here. Happy I can help.
Yeah, thanks, Duane. So if you allow, shall we start?
Yeah.
Okay. So the very first question is, can you explain the factors and the criteria which you consider when selecting an agile framework to ensure that it aligns with the organizational goal, culture, and project requirements? So I think it's a very important question for someone who just want to scale. Yeah.
Well, obviously, every program is unique, right? Every product has different requirements, has different people involved in the process of creating value from start to finish, right? If everything's known perfectly and we know exactly what our output needs to look like, the answer is just use waterfall. Very few people meet that criteria. Very few products meet that criteria, rather. Most Agile practitioners are familiar with what's called the Stacy diagram. That helps us have a little bit of a visual that guides the decision-making process from where do we go from here. If things are complex or complicated and it requires creative work, we choose Scrum. Usually, there's always some what if. The answer in business is always it depends, right? If things are chaotic, then we choose Kanban to provide a more rapid feedback cycle. It depends entirely on your individuals, how they interact, the value you're creating, and how short of a feedback cycle you need to create the best impact and the best value for your product. I think that's the best answer I can give right now.
Great. Thank you for that. Okay. Let's move on. So could you describe any specific instance where you implemented agile practices that led to a measurable improvements in an organization performance? It can be anything. It can be like in their business growth as well. So if you can share that such kind of example, that would be great. And what are the key challenges and how you overcome those challenges, things like that.
Yeah. There have been many times when I walked into a program or to help a product and it's been a mess. That's fairly common for Agile practitioners. We join a product, we join a team, and it's clear that up until we were there, nothing real has been implemented. To protect the privacy of my customers, I can't give any specific examples about who and where, but one product that I helped several employers ago, there were about 9 teams. It was about 130 people total, I believe, if you included support staff and the individual contributors, but maybe 70 total developers. They didn't speak to each other very well. They didn't collaborate inter-team. And I was charged with helping stand up 3 new teams to show a proof of concept for a forward-looking modernization effort. It was a very difficult environment because as a contractor in that situation, I was not only tasked with creating organizational change, but also it was made very clear to me that I was in a tenuous situation where if I upset the full-time employees, it wouldn't be a long engagement. There was a lot of luck involved and a lot of interpersonal relationship building. But over time, I was able to help my teams to build not only effective results for the proof of concept, but also communication between teams. We used a few different methods. First, we started a developer guild where we brought new ideas, we presented them, and we let all of the people who worked on that product pick it apart, come and ask questions, and be involved in helping to make the ideas better. Not just from a theoretical standpoint, but also from a, hey, this is where we're sitting and this is who we are, and these are the nuances involved in our product. It was really cool to watch because a lot of the people who had before been inured or calloused to, oh, that's a new idea, I don't want to do it, I'm comfortable where I'm at, joined in and started contributing to the things that we were proposing for moving forward.
Mhm.
On top of that, inside of the teams that I helped to form, we used what are basic innovative practices, but worked really well because of the people involved in the teams. They responded very well to visual, whatever it was, visual artifacts, things they could see and touch. So we started using whiteboarding sessions. Once a week, we'd get together and we'd just stand by our whiteboard and start drawing things out in whiteboard marker. Hey, I think this framework or this infrastructure or this way of wiring things up would be most effective. It didn't just give people a visual, it also helped our more junior developers to see exactly how our more senior developers were thinking and share their skills. In both directions. We got some great feedback from our newbies, and we had some really good feedback in the other direction as well. Measurably, it's difficult to, let me start that statement over. It's difficult to give you any measurable outputs from that because of both my customers' confidentiality, but also because most of the improvements we made, most of the ability we brought toward creating value for not only our customer, but for our teams to keep them engaged and help them create impact was focused on getting people to interact with each other, again, with the individuals and interactions. Over the course of the 2 years I was at that engagement, it was really cool to see the results where we went from, hey, this program, this product is completely broken, to there's hope for the future. And I don't have any KPIs for that, but watching the change in morale over time was astounding. It was great. I loved it.
Great, great. And in terms of communication, I just want to check, like, there are times when it's difficult, in terms of team members, because some of the team members are a little bit introvert. They don't open up so, openly, in front of other people out there. So, do you also face similar kind of challenges in your any past engagement, or if you want to share, like, how you help those individuals to come out from, that kind of mindset where they just keep quiet? And it's very often when we have like team members distributed. Some people are India, some are in USA, if you are in UK, for example. So
Mhm.
you face some such kind of challenges in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked on a couple multinational products. Um, Generally speaking, humans are human, right? And we just want to be met where we are. I've had teams that were partly on site here in the US and partly in India or Poland or Germany or the Netherlands. And my most effective tool for getting people to want to talk to me is it's ridiculously simple. It's just learn pieces of their language. I had one team that was entirely Telugu, and it was fun watching their faces when I was like, wait, how do you say this in Telugu? For anyone watching who doesn't know what that is, that's a tribal language in India. Uh, it's a culture, little one. And they're very good people. They were a lot of fun to work with. And our first piece of code, our first push to our development or to our production environment, at the end of our presentation, at the end of, hey, we're going to send this later today, I said, Abhinandanalu. And congratulations. And my developers they thought it was hilarious watching me try and use their language, but they
Yeah,
also responded as people like, hey, there's some interest here. He sees us as people with stories instead of just
true.
tools. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, I suppose outside of linguistics, a lot of it is just creating psychological safety for people.
Mhm.
When people feel as though you're just using them. They obviously are only going to give you the minimum output to keep their jobs. Self-preservation is a survival instinct. But if you're able to create a team that sees that you care about each of them uniquely, because a Scrum Master is more than just a process shepherd. We're also part-time therapists and sometimes a shield and sometimes just an umbrella to keep the rain off. We're that multi-tool that helps people feel secure so that they can take the risks needed for this creative work to provide complex outcomes that help solve problems.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that, Duane.
Mhm.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, so let's talk about retrospective. So, can you just explain like your way of style or how you facilitate the retrospective? And the most important part is like the feedback or the action item which we get from the retrospective, how you're going to make sure that those action items has been taken care and it has to be, comes to an end. Sometimes it happens that, yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult to close those action items and things like that. And also like if you can also share some of the examples where these retrospective help in your continuous improvement, that's going to affect your team performance in a longer run. So that will be also great. Jan?
Yeah, okay. I'm a big fan of the liberating structures. They are free to use. There's 30 of them. There's a matrix that you can use to help you pick which one is the right one. And when you chain them, or when you're able to implement them effectively, and often that means using a combination of them, they can lead to some fantastic outcomes because they help you to frame your perspective differently than you usually would, and inspire a group of people to not only provide bottom-up solutions or bottom-up, at least approaches to the problem, it also helps to inspire conversations across all levels of an organization. So whether you're doing it within your own Scrum team or whatever other group you work within, or with the executives of your company, or just your entire area for your product, you have some very valuable outcomes that come from it. For example, a recent corporate engagement I had, I brought all of our development leads, our tech leads, our managers, and our executives into the same room. And a retrospective done well it's always more than an hour.
Absolutely.
People who try to contain a retrospective to an hour are hobbling themselves. This retro took 3 or 4 hours, I can't recall. And getting that amount of time from our execs it was difficult. They
Yeah,
didn't,
always.
yeah. It took calling in a few favors to get them into that room to participate in the discussion. But the outcomes we had from that, we did, to call out a couple of the exercises, we used a wicked questions exercise to identify what contradictions we were living through. And then we, I believe, used a 15% solutions, something that we could, as a group, commit to without any change in responsibility, authority, or resources provided. And it was amazing to see this group of 20 odd people talk to each other as peers, even though they were across all echelons in the corporation, to find a way to resolve our common difficulties.
Mhm.
Over time, it was, to move on to the next part of your question, following through and making sure action items are resolved. It depends on the organization, but it's almost always difficult because once the retro's over, everybody is like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm done. My part's done. Sometimes you have to let your team fail because as a Scrum Master, as an Agile coach, whatever I'm working as at the time, it's not my job to provide the solutions to the team. It's my job to help the team find the solutions and then allow them to use them. If I give them the answer every time, if I do the thing for them every time, I will only be a crutch. So each team I've had at some point or another, I've had to say, hey guys, you talked to each other. You accepted that this was the action you had to take. Did we do that? And sometimes the answer is no. If they ask me for help, obviously I will help. If they need help finding connections within the organization or tools or resources to be able to connect the dots so that they can implement the solution that they have an idea for, absolutely. I will guide them every step of the way. But my eventual goal is to make myself unnecessary so that my team can grow and mature without me as a bottleneck. Over time, I step backward and I allow my teams to take those actions by themselves, always making sure that they know I'm right here if they need me.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Again, it's on KPIs and matrices. So, though I know like you have already mentioned in your previous answer, but still, like now I want to ask you specifically, like what KPIs and matrices do you use to evaluate the effectiveness of agile practices within a project or maybe within an organization? So,
Mhm.
yeah.
I think the metrics of flow are most effective for me. If you've ever checked out the books written by the people over at Actionable Agile, there we go. They outline that there are three basic metrics of flow. You have work in progress, you have throughput, and you have cycle time. Those three metrics on their own help to tell the story of how effective a team is at getting work from, hey, I picked this up and I'm working on it, to it's done, it meets the definition of done, and we can deliver it. Each of those three metrics takes a different standpoint. Obviously, work in progress is a measure of focus. If I have 3 team members and 6 items in progress at the same time, we're probably not being as effective as we could. If things are taking an inordinate amount of time to move from start to finish, that's probably something that we need to have a conversation about, at least to identify what went wrong so that we can control for it in the future. And throughput, if we get significantly fewer items done during a sprint or significantly more items done during a sprint, let's talk about what happens so that we can control for that in the future, unless we just had a major windfall and got 1 million work items done in a couple weeks. I prefer to keep things simple. Generally speaking, metrics are only a tool that I use to have an informed conversation. If I'm focused only on the metrics of my team,
Yeah, that's
say that again, sorry.
no. I'm telling like yeah, that's perfectly yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, if I'm focusing only on the metrics of my team, then I'm missing the other half of the conversation, the human side. Back to you.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Hmm.
Okay, so as most of your experience into this agile transition and transformation, so if you can share with our audience the step-by-step approach which you take to introduce and integrate all these agile practices in a team or in a organization. So how do you handle all these issues with respect to change and team alignment and again measure the success of the implementation? So if you want to throw some light over there.
Yeah. Generally speaking, when I join a product or a team or whatever word you want to use for it, I don't change anything for long enough that I'm familiar with why things are the way they are. If I'm starting a new team, that's obviously a fresh slate, but joining things that are in flight and pushing the buttons without knowing what they do is a great way to break stuff and make people not like you. After I've been able to listen to a team or a team of teams, depending on where I am, and understand what they are facing, what challenges they're trying to resolve, where they're coming from as people, and where the product is in its development life cycle, then I start suggesting improvements. So I suppose the very first stage is rapport building and also information seeking, trying to sense out the environment to make sure that they're ready to hear me and that I have already heard them. Um, hmm. After that, starting small is key. If you join something and you listen to people and then you say, let's change everything, they're going to think you were just holding your tongue for long enough that you could blow up the world. And that's not helpful either. Introducing small improvements so that you can demonstrate how they resonate throughout an environment is important for gathering for gathering people to help. Showing the impact, showing how you can help, encourages people to join in the effort. Building a community of practice is often a tool that I'll use to get people on board, to skill share with them, have conversations about things I may not be seeing, and also to hear back about the results of any experiments we're running at the time. Those small changes that we sent out into the environment of the product, through the teams, through our ways of working, whatever it is. Hear back about whether or not it's worth continuing or if we should try something else. Over time, those changes can become bigger. Kind of like boiling the frog, but hopefully in a healthier way. Over time, we start to have more risky ideas. We have bigger conversations. We have those liberating structure retrospectives that go across teams. And we gain the buy-in of not only our leads, our stronger members, our other agilists, and our executives, but hopefully all of our team members as well. By building trust across the organization and demonstrating that the small things helped and we're not there to make their lives more complicated, we can implement bigger things like, hey guys, I know that each of the teams is doing the Bear Scrum events, and I know that everyone's following the definition of done. It's been a lot of fun getting us all here. Let's try something bigger. Over time, that helps to build an organization's maturity to a level where they stand a greater chance of success. I think I answered your question. Did I get all the aspects?
Yeah, correct. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
But I have one follow-up question on this. Most of the time, gaining the support from key stakeholder or from the sponsor is always a issue, especially when we talk about agile transformations. So, can you share your approach to gain that kind of support from the key stakeholders? How do you communicate the benefit, and how do you address their concerns, and how do you ensure that this continuous engagement will be going to be a successful, like that kind of commitment from stakeholder throughout the transition? So if you can also want to share some of your experience over here.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a Scrum Master is often has to act as a politician because we represent the people that we're charged with protecting, with helping, with coaching. And that means that we need to form relationships with whatever levels of leadership are exposed to the product. People that impact our teams are our problem. Not necessarily as, hey, we don't like you, but as, okay, this is an equation I need to balance so that you can have input into what's built and we can have input into the way that you affect us. Sometimes it requires very radical honesty. Sometimes that means we have to have a difficult conversation with someone who could absolutely fire us. But a good Scrum Master is always about this close to being fired anyway, because we're the person who represents the difficult conversations. If we avoid them, if we hide from that conversation, we stand the chance of being ineffective or losing credibility with our teams because we are not representing them accurately or wholeheartedly. Sometimes that means we represent the things that are most broken in our product directly to the people in management positions. Hey, we delivered this feature. We delivered it this amount of time after our stakeholders or our customers, our users asked for it. It's no longer valuable because the cycle took too long. The cycle took too long because of this thing in our organization that keeps us from responding proactively. The teams have an idea for fixing this. I want to try this. We want to try this. Will you sponsor this so that we can be more effective, more competitive, and more realistic? Generally, it comes down to a conversation of return on investment. Right now, we did this thing. It took this amount of time. It was too slow. Our competitors beat us. Our customers don't want it anymore. It's behind the curve. We've lost our investment. Being able to represent that conversation with business acumen as well as interpersonal intelligence is an essential skill for a Scrum Master.
True. Okay. Yeah, thanks for that, Duane. Okay, let's move on. So, could you describe your most successful experience in a leadership role? It can be anything. Do you think like, yeah, that's something which I really want to uh, tell audience?
Yeah. Um, hmm. I've had a lot of fun helping teams all around the world across many different products. I think my most successful role was when I was working on a global healthcare platform in the
Mhm.
past couple of years. When I joined the product, the Scrum of Scrums had 60 people in it every day and took over an hour. It was ineffective, and leadership didn't know how to engage with the teams in a healthy manner. Over the course of a little more than a year that I was there, I was able to help not only form an extremely effective cadre of Scrum Masters, a few communities of practice, there we go, sorry, and help to harden people's skills, help to form the lines of communication we needed to create organizational change across teams. I was also able to involve our executives, involve our management, so that the conversation didn't just go laterally. It also occurred in a way that provided solutions from the bottom upward. I had a lot of fun at that engagement, and I miss those teams. They made some amazingly impactful things that did real, tangible good in the world. And I think, yeah, I am glad I got to be a part of that.
Okay, okay, wonderful. Okay, so let's move on. So this one is about adapting all these agile best practices. So, I mean, as you all say that it's easy, the agile is easy, but then implementation part is always difficult. So, can you provide some examples or a situation from an organization or from a team where they face difficulties in adopting the agile practices? And if you can share like some of the major obstacles or the issues which all these transformation majorly face, and how we can address those challenges and how we can overcome these challenges. So that's a question for you. Yeah.
Yeah, every organization has difficulty using anything agile. It's new and it's difficult, and learning is hard because unfortunately we're all human. Changing our habits requires pain. Not because Scrum Masters like hurting people, but because changing our habits is a cause of pain. It's a cause of stress. Trying new, unfamiliar things is scary. An organization that decides to take on an agile framework, whatever it is, Scrum, Kanban, Less, Nexus, any, is taking a huge risk. That's difficult not only to make the sale of, hey, let's try this, it's also difficult to bring everyone along. But to create a successful change that's necessary. Sometimes that means that we identify, hey, this person has an aptitude for this. Let's help cross-train them, or let's get them involved because they're exceptional at finding who does what within the organization and connecting us with people that we need involved in this to make change. And sometimes that means that we have to identify people who are actively sabotaging us, whether or not they realize it, and find them a new role. Not all agile transformations succeed. Many of them fail. And a lot of the time it boils down to leadership was looking for a buzzword, or this person who was key for the transformation wasn't bought in and didn't want this, so they worked against us the whole time. Much of the time, these things fail because of sabotage, whether it's the teams don't want to follow along or management didn't want to do it, whatever it is, we've all seen it. In those cases, if you can't have the difficult conversations that result in a change to help remove those bottlenecks, those roadblocks, or whatever it is that's in your way, it's best to fire your client and move on because you're not going to succeed. Other times, it's possible to have these changes made, to work with management, to work with our teams and represent the things that are challenging the organization. And over time, whether it's a simple implementation of Scrum or Kanban or something bigger, something scaled or a large organization, whatever it is, you start where your teams are and you walk them slowly toward maturity, understanding that there are plenty of great teams out there, but there are no perfect teams. There will always be room for improvement. Introduce every retrospective with Norm Kurth's retrospective prime directive. I understand you guys all did the best you could with what we had at the time. Let's talk about what we could change. That is, in my experience, the most effective way toward helping people grow and change over time.
Okay.
Just like teaching kids to brush their teeth. It takes practice.
Absolutely. Okay, wonderful. Okay, I think we are good for today. We are just bang on time. We just within half an hour.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you for joining us today. And friends, we hope you found this session helpful, useful. So don't forget to leave a comment and like this video to show your support. Your feedback help us to create more valuable content for you. So please leave your feedback in a comment section. And if you're new here, please subscribe and become a part of our CareersTalk family. So with this, thank you everyone and see you in the next session. Thank you, Dan, one more time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.